Some confusion about one of the options to change the makeup of future city councils. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Members of the Council Composition Review Committee say there's growing fatigue with the process.
That was brought up at today's meeting, which also saw a discussion on the second round of community feedback. Vasilios Bellos was at that meeting, and Vasilios, what are some of the takeaways?
Riley, the idea of having 2 councillors per ward has been a big talking point amongst those participating in the consultations. It's not unheard of in other cities, with committee members planning to talk with officials in another municipality with that system later this month. It's already been an extensive process for the Council Composition Review Committee.
A bit of fatigue from the public on this topic. We have been talking about it for many months.
City Clerk Krista Powers says that wariness amongst local citizens was apparent following a number of community consultation opportunities. That includes during ward meetings and another public survey which has just closed. Powers says the extensive public opportunities is crucial, considering how significant the changes could be to local governance and that most people in the community are happy to have their voices heard.
The public's opinion is really important in this process, which is why we've done such a big push for consultation. So whether it's coming to council and it's in the presentation of a bylaw and folks want to contact their member of council to say they agree or they don't, we're going to hear that feedback.
The committee is looking at 2 options. The first featuring 10 at-large councillors and the mayor. The other sees 4 wards with similar population and median income, with 2 councillors per ward, along with 2 at-large councillors and the mayor.
A bit of surprise from a 2 councillor in ward perspective.
While the recent public survey data isn't out yet, Vice Chair Cody Fraser says the potential of 2 councillors per ward has sparked the most community discussion. Fraser says to better understand it, they'll be speaking to representatives from Guelph this month, a city which currently uses that system.
We don't know exactly how it would all practically unfold. So I think having that feedback from the folks from Guelph will be really helpful for us to go out and talk in the community, because that is, I would say, number one. Well, how does that work? Who does all the work? Who do I call? That kind of stuff. We'll get that feedback.
The survey results are now being compiled, but there's no set date for the release. The committee will be presenting the recommendations for the future makeup of local governance to City Council for approval in the new year. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Still at City Hall, Council discussed the proposed $161 million capital budget for 2025 last night.
While there's a $60 million increase over 2024, the majority is still made up of renewal projects. Once again, here's Vasilios Bellos.
The proposed 2025 capital budget was brought as a first report to City Council on Monday night. While the approval isn't scheduled until later this month, Council members and the public learned more about the $161 million spending plan, including the $55 million being spent from reserve funds.
The financial health of a city or or any corporation for that matter is to a degree dependent on the health of its reserves.
City Manager John Collin addressed that number, saying using reserve funds in the budget isn't out of the ordinary, with the focus always being on refilling those dollars.
Determine which methods we are going to use to top up those reserves. And when you see the operating budget that will be put before you, you will see the areas where we are topping up reserves. But we are very conscious of the reality that we must keep our reserves healthy as we move forward.
The proposed capital budget includes a nearly $60 million jump compared to 2024, primarily due to the indoor turf facility. $32 million is allocated for that project, around 75% of its total cost. Despite this, more than 80% of the budget still focuses on renewal for things like roads and facilities. This year's process is something new for Thunder Bay, as both the capital and operations budgets are usually debated together in the new year. City Treasurer Carrie Grieve says taking care of the capital portion beforehand has its benefits.
Allows us to get ahead of the market in terms of projects on the street, and hopefully that will help reduce costs and give us some favorable scheduling with the contractors out there.
The proposed 2025 capital budget will come back to Council for approval on November 25th. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Local Moose Lodge members finally have some answers as to why the Moose Hall on Fort William Road closed so suddenly last month. A closed-door meeting was held at the facility last night where Moose members were reportedly told the closure is mainly due to legal troubles surrounding a single member. Organizers of the meeting told Dougal Media that the gathering was held to provide information to the membership only, but a few members who wished to remain anonymous told our reporters afterwards that those legal issues were the driving factor and that the decision to close came from the international level. Meeting attendees spoke up against what they called punishing the group for the actions of an individual. They were also reportedly told there is a chance the hall could reopen again in 2 weeks. Moose Lodge officials declined to comment about the situation.
Parks Canada is making amends with Red Rock Indian Band, according to Federal Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu.
The First Nation has been at odds with Parks Canada over the handling of historic remains in Nipigon. Justin Hardy has more.
Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu says Parks Canada is working with Red Rock Indian Band to make amends after the unearthing of ancestral remains. Band members and supporters staged a peaceful protest on the Nipigon Bridge on October 21st to have their voices heard on what they consider repeated disrespect towards the remains of 4 Indigenous ancestors dating back at least 600 years. They were uncovered during excavation for a Parks Canada Visitor Centre and Administration building in Nipigon. The remains were incomplete due to how much earth was removed from the site before discovery, with roughly 60 loads of earth unaccounted for. Hajdu says she's been working with the band to hear what they have to say.
Well, yes, actually I've spoken with Chief Adawa a number of times about the Environment Canada, Parks Canada build and what led to the protest. Everyone agrees that the process was flawed.
Hajdu took part in the groundbreaking ceremony back in May for the future National Marine Conservation Area building at the Nipigon Marina, a site that has now been rolled out because of its sacred significance. Some other potential locations around Nipigon are currently being looked into. Hajdu says that while that process continues, Parks Canada has been working steadily with the First Nation to repair the damage over the handling of the situation at the original site.
As you know, Parks Canada has agreed to not proceed on that site and has been working to recover any of the fill and the dirt that was removed. I think that Chief Ottawa understands that Parks Canada is working more collaboratively with the community. Certainly, Parks Canada understands the importance of making sure that the community feels that they have been made whole, and we certainly are working with them to achieve that.
Red Rock Indian Band Chief Alan Odawa Jr. was unavailable for interview, but says he will be meeting with Parks Canada officials later this week. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
Police with the Repeat Offender Parole Enforcement, or ROPE Squad, have issued a Canada-wide warrant for a federal offender convicted of manslaughter who's known to visit the Thunder Bay area. Dennis Bernard breached his statutory release while serving a 2-year, 8-month sentence. Bernard is Indigenous, 40 years old, standing 5'11" and weighing 150 pounds. He has black hair in braids and brown eyes. He also has a number of tattoos, including the word jazz on the front of his neck. Anyone with information as to the whereabouts of Dennis Bernard is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
To Queen's Park now, where bike lanes were front and center in the legislature today.
There's still some confusion over the province's plan to remove some bike lanes in parts of the province where traffic congestion is an issue. CTV's Siobhan Morris reports.
The Ford government insists bike lanes along University, Bloor and Yonge have to come out to help drivers
get to their families, can get to work easier and quicker.
But the City of Toronto thinks it deserves compensation for all the lead up to the lanes being installed.
So that would be the staff time that we put into it and the development time and looking at the work that went into the implementation, not just the actual construction.
Johnson wants to crunch the numbers to know how many millions we're talking.
Mainly because we need to reinvest that back into our cycling network.
For now, the transportation minister isn't promising specifics.
We're going to reimburse the removal of the bike lanes. And we know that the cost from a productivity perspective is way higher.
The legislation to restrict the addition of new bike lanes and to re-examine existing ones was introduced just over 2 weeks ago. But it, along with an energy bill, are being fast-tracked. Another potential sign Ontario is cruising toward an early election.
Pursuant to Standing Order 50.
The government reordering the rules of the House to limit debate and committee hearings on those two bills.
Our government needs to get people moving. My job as House Leader is to get legislation moving. I'm in a a very short legislative session.
A shortened 7-week schedule designed by progressive conservatives.
This whole government was willing to break for a record-long summer vacation when people in Ontario needed them focused on the priorities that they have.
The Liberals not surprised.
The government's rushing through all legislation. They just want to get out of here because they don't want to talk about what the election's going to be all about.
Fraser says that's not enough family doctors, wait times in hospitals, and for long-term care.
Their record on that after 6 years is abysmal.
Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
Synergy North is urging customers who aren't already signed up for e-billing to consider doing so due to the possibility of a Canada Post service disruption. Canada Post and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers are trying to negotiate a new collective agreement, but a deal hasn't been reached yet. Synergy North reminds customers that bills still need to be paid on time even if there's a disruption. Customers can sign up for e-billing on the utility's website. Those who need help can also call Synergy North's customer service line.
The Transportation Safety Board has released its final report regarding a small plane which skidded past the end of the runway in Casablanca Lake First Nation last November. The mishap caused significant damage, but no injuries. The aircraft, operated by Northstar Air, had 2 pilots and 6 passengers on board on its flight from Sioux Lookout. The pilot fully applied the brakes, but the aircraft skidded and ran into the bush about 100 meters past the end of the runway. The landing gear collapsed, both tires were blown, and the propeller, engine, wings, and fuselage were damaged. The TSB says a combination of wind gusts, landing speed, and touching down too far along the icy gravel runway all seemed to contribute to the overrun. Since the incident, Northstar has revised its standard operating procedures on airspeed during final approaches in these conditions. The TSB, meanwhile, continues to recommend longer runway buffers at remote airports.
A longtime trucking company headquartered in Thunder Bay has shut its doors and idled its fleet. Mev Trucking apparently ceased operations on October 31st. Dougal Media has been unable to reach anyone from Mev management for comment, but according to company employees, shipping operations were halted last week. Staff are in the process of closing down offices across Ontario, and the company's website is no longer active. Mev Trucking grew from a single truck at its inception in 1948 to one of the largest carriers in Northern Ontario. At one point, it had 165 tractors and 450 trailers. In addition to its base on Carrick Street, Mev is also closing its facilities in Sault Ste. Marie, Timmins, Sudbury, North Bay, and Mississauga.
Every year, the Thunder Bay Police Association, main sponsor TBT, and the City Police Force organize the Parade of Lights, and this morning they held a launch event for next month's big parade. This is a milestone year, marking the 25th edition of the Parade of Lights. The number of floats in the parade has grown each year, and so too has the fundraising total. The event raised over $44,000 last year, split between the local branch of Autism Ontario, the George Jeffrey Children's Centre, the Therapeutic Riding Centre, and Special Olympics. Parade committee organizers gathered at Manitoulin Transport today to provide further details about this year's event. They also introduced one of their honorary parade marshals, Larissa Rosnick, who's excited to see all the colorful lights.
It's have lots of colors. Red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, and purple.
Every year we have vehicles that have been here, been involved since probably day one. And they're like constant. They're like taxes. They're there every year, and we appreciate that. And then we have the new ones, the ones that are they're all really excited, but the ones that are, this is their first year, and they're, like, what can we do? Can we have people on the float? Can we do this or that? And we have certain restrictions, but it's pretty well, if you create it and it's safe, bring it on.
The 25th annual Parade of Lights takes place on December 7th, starting at 7 o'clock.